Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
This weekend, both NC State and UConn have a chance to win a national championship in both men's and women's basketball. What stands in their way? And Geno Auriemma once turned down Caitlyn Clark. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Make every moment more. New customers, join today and you'll get $150 in bonus bets if your first bet of $5 or more wins. Just visit FanDuel.com/lockedon to get started.
I'm Peter Bukowski, starting your day with the can't-miss stories and biggest debates in sports. You're Locked On Sports Today.
Searching all major sports. Found.
Let's start with the biggest story.
The UCONN Huskies decided to double dip in the Final Four. The men and women thought, hey, this is our party. We've been here before. We're back. And undoubtedly, the game of the weekend in the men's or women's side is UConn against Iowa. Caitlyn Clark against Paige Bueckers, though Paige Bueckers would push back and say, look, I don't want to make this about me. In fact, she said next year, I hope it's not about me. I hope it's about other people. I'm sorry, Paige. At least for this game, it is going to be a lot about you. Mark Zanetto from Locked On UConn joins me now. And Mark, I want to start with this game because a record-setting performance in terms of viewership with Caitlyn Clark, a record-setting performance with Caitlyn Clark on the court, and yet Geno Auriemma says Paige Bueckers is the best player in women's college basketball. What can UConn do to slow down Caitlyn Clark?
I said this on a show, and I thank you very much for having me. I said it on a show the other day that I think Geno is smart enough to change things up a little bit. I don't think you're going to see a Kim Mulkey just kind of, or Brad Underwood to show the men's side, just kind of like, we're going to do what we do. I think Geno is going to, even though he's an older gentleman, I think he'll definitely be throwing some junk defenses that are, that's, I don't think of box and one as a junk defense, but I think they'll probably double her more, make others try to beat them. UConn has 7 active players essentially, right? They don't have a very deep bench. So it's going to be difficult to kind of manage fouls. They took timeouts against USC to kind of give people rest. So it's going to be a real delicate balance to not only just stopping her, but to keep these girls fresh down the stretch in the game.
How much of what they did with Juju Watkins do you think is translatable here with Caitlyn Clark? Because we saw in the second half, Paige took the responsibility. She was guarding Juju, and Juju was guarding her on the other end, and Juju still got hers, but it was a more complete UConn performance that ultimately won that game. Can they afford to say, hey, Paige, you're a good defensive player. You have the size to guard Caitlyn Clark. Go do that for 40 minutes if they're both going to play all 40, because they both did in the Elite Eight.
Yeah, no, I think you're going to see a combination of Nico Mule. I think you're going to see a little bit of Paige. I think Ice Brady's going to get the call a little bit more on this to try to kind of sick Paige, right? Kind of cut the head off the dragon, if you will. But again, I think what you have to do is you can't let others the girls who averaged 8 to 12 points a game gave you 21 to 14 last game if you're Iowa. Yeah, you cannot let that happen again. I think I think that's got to be Geno's formula here. I don't necessarily think he cares if Caitlyn goes for 40 and they win. So it's more about limiting the damage everyone else. When we were growing up, we just talked about we're a similar age. The Jordan rules, right? Yeah. If Jordan gives you 50, but Scottie Pippen only scores 10, you got a better chance to win. So I think that applies here as well.
On the men's side, it feels like we are on a collision course for UConn and Purdue. From the UConn perspective, what would be the thing that would make you most nervous about this game, understanding that they are the strong favorites in this one, double-digit favorites, in fact?
For the first game out against Alabama?
Yes.
Well, contrary to what Alabama fans have been saying on Twitter or X, it's definitely not going to be about their up-tempo game. It's going to be more about UConn's shooting lately, 28% from 3 throughout the tournament.
Yeah, not great.
But then you look at the efficiency of how good this offense is. In the game against Northwestern, they shot 13% from 3, but 82% from 2-point range. So when you're getting that type of efficiency, it doesn't really scare you to play a team that shoots a lot of threes. UConn's defense is so good. I think we forget that because of how efficient their offense is. They are number 4 in the country in defense as well. Not much scares me about the Alabama game.
Stay up to date all year long on the Connecticut Huskies by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On UConn on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Thanks for making Locked On Sports Today your first listen. Coming up, NC State has shocked everyone to make it as far as they have in both tournaments. Can they continue the surprise? Before we answer that, we'll give you the Sacramento A's. Did you know that even if you have a 401k for retirement, you can still have an IRA? Robinhood has the only IRA that gives you a 3% boost on every dollar you contribute when you subscribe to Robinhood Gold. But get this, now through April 30th, Robinhood is even boosting every dollar you transfer in from other retirement accounts with a 3% match. That's right, no cap on the 3% match. Robinhood Gold gets you the most for your retirement thanks to an IRA with 3% match. This offer's good through April 30th. Get started at Robinhood.com/boost. Subscription fees apply. And now for some legal info. Claim as of Q1 2024, validated by Radius Global Market Research. Investing involves risk, including loss. Limitations apply to IRAs and 401ks. 3% match requires Robinhood Gold for 1 year from the date of first 3% match. Must keep Robinhood IRA for 5 years. The 3% matching on transfers is subject to specific terms and conditions. Robinhood IRA available to U.S. customers in good standing. Robinhood Financial LLC, member SIPC, is a registered broker-dealer. Are you watching Fox Sports or ESPN on your TV all day long? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports Today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports Today brings you can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channels app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. The Oakland A's are trying to make a move to Las Vegas, but the big question mark is where they will play after this season. They now have an answer, and John Fisher seems weirdly excited about it.
In my opinion, the A's only belong one place, and that's Oakland. So even though the A's, my favorite team, is coming to Sacramento, my home city, I am 100% with every part of my being against this move. Honestly, part of me wishes I was selfish enough to be able just to say, oh, well, great for Sacramento. And there are a lot of people here in Sacramento that do feel that way. It is in many ways, it is a great day for Sacramento, but I simply cannot feel that way. But still had a job to do, going to cover the press conference this morning that was held at 10 a.m. The news broke officially. It was reported last night that this was probably happening. The news broke officially at like 7:30 this morning Pacific time. And then they said, oh, yeah, there's going to be a press conference at 10 a.m., giving our friends at the Bay Area media almost no time to gather together, get in a car, and get down here, which I think was by design. This announcement also came as soon as the A's left on a road trip, which I also think is by design here and just a classic play from this ownership group's playbook.
Can I just say one thing? The Irsay and the owners of the Baltimore Colts would look at this and say, oh, this is kind of sleazy.
On the hardwood, the Heat dropped a heartbreaker at home to the Sixers.
After the Heat lost to the Sixers 109-105, they gave themselves a chance late in this game, but Tyrese Maxey and Kelly Oubre scored 11 points in the final 4 minutes. The Heat themselves made just one field goal, David, in the last 8 minutes of this game. And that was a Terry Rozier bailout step back three, as he's been accustomed to having to do in this offense lately. Tyrese Maxey himself outscored Jimmy Butler and Bam Adebayo combined. Jimmy and Bam, 34 points between the two of them. Tyrese Maxey finished with 37. So now the Heat find themselves a half game back of the Pacers. They're back in 7th place, which would put them back into the play-in tournament with 6 games left here for them.
And on the diamond, the New York Mets. They finally won a game.
The New York Mets have finally won a game. It was in agonizing fashion and just an excruciatingly painful doubleheader to watch, where they blew the first game after having a 3-0 lead, but they come around in game 2 at the very, very end. They couldn't buy a hit all game. They couldn't put together anything on offense. Then the 9th inning with a 1-0 score, Pete Alonso, just determined to put that run on the board himself, digs out a low pitch with a 3/4 swing. I don't know how he hit that ball out, but he did. It tied up the score. It took the pressure off. Brett Beatty has a great at-bat, draws a walk. Starling Marte bunts him into scoring position, and Tyrone Taylor seals the deal with the walk-off hit. I'm breaking all this down on tomorrow's edition of Locked On Mets, as this team can rest a little bit easier heading into their first road trip of the season.
NC State basketball program got a little greedy. 2 teams in the Final Four, one on the men's side, one on the women's side, which means we could have dueling banjos in the national championship game. We could have a dual national championship. Talking about UConn could have a men's and women's title. Hey, North Carolina State is going, hey, look at us. We could too. Ken Gibbs from Locked On Wolfpack joins me now. And Ken, this has been a remarkable run for the men. DJ Burns is this, apparently an NFL draft star too, in addition to all of this, but he's got Zach Edey and the #1 seed at Purdue. We talked about this a little early in the week when we found out this was going to be the matchup. Now that you've had a week to marinate on all of this, what do you think of this matchup here?
I still stand where I said to begin with. Like, in the words of Glorilla, NC State has 99 problems, and the biggest one is Edey. That's the reality, right? Purdue, outside of Edey, is obviously a wonderful team, and they've shot well from 3 all year because of the open looks that he's going to provide. However, I still stand on the fact that which shot would I rather have a team take? 7-4, 2-time National Player of the Year at the rim, or at best, an all-conference guy shooting from deep? I don't know. I think Zach Edey's shooting a little better than 40% from the field. And so I think that the strategy of anybody but Edey should be great for that team. And also I had Wolfpack legend Thurl Bailey on the Locked On Wolfpack podcast the other day. And he reminded me of something that I had lost, and that, it's always been in my psyche, but I forgot it for some reason. He said, they don't have to worry about Edey. Edey has to worry about them. This is a team this is a Final Four team as well. So as much as you talk about how good Zach Edey is, you still have DJ Horn to worry about. You still have DJ Burns to worry about. You still have very timely 3-point shooting from our guards when needed. Nothing more timely than what Michael O'Connell's doing. He wants big shots only. He don't want no little layup in the beginning of the game. He wants pressure on the line. The weight of the world on his shoulders, give him the rock. He going to make something special happen. And Mo Diarra, I'll tell you what, that man is eating glass right now. He is. If it comes off the rim, Mo's got a great chance to come down with it. So I stand where I stood before, and that there are too many coincidences rolling in the Wolfpack's favor for me to bet against them here. And America seems to be with me, because 76% of bets. And here's the thing that gets tricky sometimes, Peter, because sometimes when people say total number of bets, they refuse to tell you the total monies. 76% of bets, 74% of all the money is going on NC State in this.
Wow.
They're America's team. They're America's sweetheart. And as a fellow member of the Rust Belt, I know when America got it out for you, you're done. You're done. That's it. That's all there is. So, I've got a lot of faith in NC State taking care of them in this one.
Yeah, Purdue's still 9.5-point favorites, and on the money line, we're talking about a minus 450 team. So if you like NC State, our friends at FanDuel have got it for you. Let's go to the women's side, because there have been a lot of conversations, Ken, about UConn, Iowa, Caitlyn Clark against Paige Bueckers. Mm-hmm. And I feel like precious few minutes devoted to South Carolina, full stop, the best team in the country that is undefeated. And then also this run from North Carolina State, where you have a team that, as you said the last time we talked, was not picked to be a Final Four team, despite being a 3 seed coming into this tournament. So do you see the stars aligning in the same sort of way for the women?
Here's a fun fact about NC State and all three of the teams left in the Final Four over there, which is surprising as to why they're such big underdogs. Well, actually, let me give you a couple fun facts. First one, they're the 14th team to have both men and women in the Final Four. Did you know that this is the first time ever both teams are 9-point or more underdogs? First time ever that's happened.
Yep, South Carolina, 11.5-point favorites in this one.
So I'm telling you, NC State women's basketball team has played all three of these teams in the last 3 years. Not only have they played them, they've beaten all three. They beat South Carolina at South Carolina. They beat Iowa and Caitlyn Clark in Des Moines. They beat Paige, Bueckers and company in terms of UConn. And so I think it's so interesting. I find it so interesting that when people think about NC State, oh, those lovable losers, oh, those old hicks up in Raleigh don't know how to play no ball. Wes Moore has disproven this time after time after time again. And so I will say this. Everybody may be sleeping on the Wolfpack. Everybody may have their alarm clock set well past Saturday night, and that's fine by me. Because guess what? All year, these teams weren't supposed to be it. All tournament, these teams weren't supposed to be it. But I said it the day that NC State got their draw in terms of the women's team. I'm not going to lie and say I knew with the men's team. But with the women's team, when I saw the part of the bracket that they were in, I said this has national championship written all over it.
Stay up to date on the NC State Wolfpack all year by subscribing to Locked On Sports Today and Locked On Wolfpack on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. Coming up, Caitlyn Clark has a shot to prove Geno Auriemma wrong in the most epic way. The sports calendar is loaded and FanDuel is making it even more exciting to get in on the action because right now new customers get $200 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That's $200 you can use to bet the tourney, Major League Baseball, the NBA, NHL, and so much more. Caitlyn Clark and the Iowa Hawkeyes are favored over Geno's Connecticut Huskies. FanDuel has Iowa laying 2.5. I mean, how? You want to bet against Caitlyn Clark? Come on. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make your first bet a big win. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Caitlyn Clark has turned the sports world on its head. Tickets to the women's Final Four double that of the men's semifinal. Yet as our Locked On Hawkeyes host details, Geno Auriemma once rejected her.
This is when Caitlyn was still a high schooler. I was calling one of her games on radio, and before the game was talking to a Dowling family member, and they had mentioned that Geno Auriemma had seen her play, but didn't stay for the whole game. Now, I never heard if this was an actual high school game or if this was an AAU event, but Geno saw her play. And at halftime, in a game that Caitlyn was struggling in, Caitlyn was turning the ball over, was becoming demonstrative and frustrated with her teammates, something that we've seen plenty of times before. And I saw a whole bunch at the high school level when I was calling her games. You'd see that, which isn't a surprise. And if you saw her, you saw that happen quite often. But the way the story went to me and the way it was relayed to me was that Geno got up, walked out of the gym, and said, I'm not watching this blank anymore. Now, again, this is just a story. This is a story I heard. I don't know the validity behind it. I don't know the truthfulness of it. It's a hell of a story, though, isn't it? And if it is true, that kind of motivation. Look, if somebody relayed it to me and it is real, you definitely knew it got to Caitlyn Clark. Now we're talking about something that happened now 6-7 years ago. This is before Caitlyn's even senior year and before she was awaiting the decision. But it's been fun to watch the backtracking from Geno Auriemma.
Believe me, no one would like to dunk on this harder than I would. But I understand when you're Geno Auriemma and you've recruited like he has over the course of his career, and every class you have is full of the best ladies in high school basketball, why you would just say, not a fit for us. He's not recruiting at Iowa. No disrespect to Iowa. It's just not Geno Auriemma at UConn. It's a different thing. It's not like he necessarily thought she was trash. This is a wonderful anecdote. I love the story. It is something that I hope we are talking about forever, because she goes out and she drops 50 on UConn and we get to say, hey, look. But it's kind of like when Geno said, I've coached enough players of the year to know what one looks like, when saying Paige Bueckers is better than Caitlyn Clark. Remember, Paige Bueckers, the elite recruit from her class, the number one player in her class. She was the ascendant superstar before getting hurt and before Caitlyn Clark took her spot as the superstar in women's college basketball. I can't dunk on Geno for this. It's a great story, though. I love it. And finally, we'll call it a total eclipse of the ballpark. The scheduled start time for Monday's game between the New York Yankees and Miami Marlins has been changed because of a total solar eclipse. New York was initially set to host the Marlins at 2:05 Eastern. The start was pushed back 4 hours. After reconsidering the challenges of playing through Monday's solar eclipse, including potential in-game delays, Major League Baseball and the Yankees have rescheduled the start time of the Yankees-Marlins game on April 8th at Yankee Stadium from 2:05 to 6:05. This from a statement the Yankees put out. Will it help their starting pitching? We'll see. Are you watching Fox Sports on ESPN on your TV all day? Have to turn down the volume with all the shouting? Make the switch to Locked On Sports today, a free 24/7 sports streaming channel programmed for you every day to bring you the biggest stories without all the screaming. Locked On Sports today brings you the can't miss analysis, opinions, and news streaming 24/7 on YouTube or the free Amazon Fire TV channel app, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Coming up on the next Locked On Sports today, who will be vying for the national championship on the hardwood? So at least until tomorrow, stay locked on sports today.
Locked On Podcast Network presents Locked On Sports Today.
For more episodes of Locked On Sports Today, go to our video on demand. Click on Sports at the top of your screen. There, you'll find past episodes of Locked On Sports Today, plus other Locked On shows on demand.